It is finally coming. Ancient Cities, the game that was announced 2 or 3 years ago now, has finally got a release date, and it's not so far away. You can expect to be playing the early access version of Ancient Cities on Steam from the 17th of December, and boy, I cannot wait. Now, I've actually got a little bit of a confession to make. I have owned Ancient Cities on Steam for the last few months, and I have been playing it and, getting to know how it works, and now I can actually make videos on it, because obviously before it was under NDA, but now we have a release date, I can do whatever I want with the game. So in the background, you're going to be seeing me playing Ancient Cities. At the moment, I'll give my first impressions in a little bit, but I'm going to talk about what Ancient Cities is if you don't know about it, and what we can expect from the early access version of the game. Ancient Cities is a city builder, but set way before anything that we've really ever seen in these types of games. The Mesolithic era is where we are starting. This is the very basis of humanity, where people started, the hunter-gatherers, to try and build these towns and settlements, and this is the raw version of any of those city builders that you played in the past. Nothing really experiences and puts the player into these types of worlds. It's always something different. It's always the modern day, or it's like a medieval city builder, or in Rome. This is so different and so unique. I think this is why when I made my first video on the actual announcement of this game, it got so many views and so much hype was built around, ancient cities. In the game, you're going to be starting with the tribe, and you can choose where you want to begin your settlement. You can migrate to wherever you want in Europe, and you can change this at whatever point you want to in the game. Maybe you don't quite like where you're living, head back into the map and change your settlement, and your guys will move there, but make sure you have the resources and the food and the water in order to do so. You'll be building up your villages. You'll start off with straw huts, and then you can move it onto walled palisades, defending against the elements, against bears, against wolves, but also other people, other tribes that you can trade with or you can fight against. Yes, there will be so many different other AIs that you'll be able to interact with throughout it. Not only do you have your own village, but you can also interact with these other villages. You can trade with them. They can give you things, or you can just take them out, gaining soldiers, building weaponry and defenses in order to become victorious if you go down the hostile route. But at its core, this is a city builder. Yeah, I guess it's kind of more called a village builder, since I don't really know how realistic it is getting to that city level with the time period that has been selected. Now, we do know, because of how successful the Kickstarter is, they're hoping to expand this game into more than just the Mesolithic era. Going later on, they're talking about Greece, Rome, and everything in between. I can't wait to see the developers' ideas on paper moving into these games. So, what do I think about the game so far with the small amount that I have played? And keep in mind that I have played an even earlier than early access version of the game, so it's very much subject to change. So far, I think it's decent. I think there's a lot going through it, and I think there's quite a lot to do. In terms of its aesthetic, I think it is beautiful. Discovering these ancient ways, the ways that people used to live, and it's so interesting immersing yourself in it. Because I do think that it gets quite a bit of a miss. The ancient world with what the general folk would call cavemen, but really the hunter-gatherers of the Mesolithic era, has so much more to explore. The game itself has a decent amount of variation between gameplay, aesthetics, and real historical accuracy. Now, I have to admit myself, I am not the most versed within this time period, but it all feels right. It feels like you're immersed in that world, and I think that's the most important part. You can set people to gather the trees, of course, berries, resources, rocks, and even go fishing. Later on, you can start hunting, and then you can start training up warriors and building up defenses if you need to. Building up fences, small to start with, but then into larger palisades, and eventually have a gated community or even town, where you're going to be able to defend against any oncoming enemies that might want to take your resources and what you have built up over this time. Currently, it is terribly optimized. I'm running it on a 3090 and a Ryzen 9 5950X, and it doesn't run well, especially when it starts raining or you try and skip time to fast forward mode, as you'll be doing most of the time. Like many of these village builders, it lags a lot, there's a lot of jittering and everything, but when it runs smoothly, it looks gorgeous. But I feel like optimization issues aren't something that I can really make a massive deal about, especially in a pre-early access version of the game, because they're all subject to change, and it's one of the main things that does get changed through development. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is early access. There's a lot of things that people don't like about early access, and granted, I'm probably more in that boat than not. Not only have we seen the gaming community in general being stung by developers promising early access and these big releases later in the future, and if you just pay into our project now, but we've really seen the medieval and historical community stung by this, especially games like Of Kings and Men and Valnir Rock promised some massive things, and then they brought out an early access and they just really kind of gave up, and it's been really disappointing, and I really think it's damaged the gaming industry in general, games that do this sort of thing, because Ancient Cities currently, I think, has massive potential. Whether it's worth buying in now, I'm gonna probably have to make a full video on that once I played a little bit more and discuss the inner workings with the developer and looked at everything that's going on within the content that you can get in early access. But early access in general is very much shunned. Whether you should buy into the Ancient Cities early access, as I said, I'll make a video on that, but you can also make your own decision by doing a little bit of research. I wouldn't do it unless you know for definite this is something you are willing to pay for. I will leave the link in the description so you can go and wishlist it just out of support for the developer, and because I know so many of you guys will be interested in this sort of thing, but please be careful. There's no point putting your money into an early access project that you don't truly believe in and that you don't feel like you're going to stick through. It's not going to be perfect straight away. Currently, I think it's a pretty buggy game, and I think there's so much work to be done. But if you believe, like me, that this has the potential to be an incredible game that you can sink tens, if not hundreds of hours into, maybe it's something you should check out, and maybe it's something you want to invest in. But remember, early access is a risk, but it's also an investment. And if you have a passion for games and a passion for small development teams that you want to support, then it's definitely something you should check out. But I would make sure you do your research first, and I will do whatever I can to help with that, creating videos, because I already have the game. So if you aren't sure, just watch my videos on it, and I will hopefully give you a good idea whether it's something that you want to do, or maybe just watching the gameplay can give you a decent idea. But I think Ancient Cities gives an incredible window into the Mesolithic era. But if you're interested, I will leave a link in the description to the Steam page where you can wishlist it, and that will help support the developers. But once again, this isn't a sponsored video, but they did give me a copy of the game early. But then again, I can say whatever the hell I like about it. I'll hopefully be bringing a full review once the game is released and once I can play enough of it to really understand and learn all the mechanics throughout it. But until then, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel if that's what you want to see. Leave a like on the video because it helps more than you could ever know. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.